Good evening and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing something slightly different, taking advantage of the new setup, and I will be reading some of the lore from League of Legends. All of this is from the universe.leagueoflegends.com. I think it's a great game with a great lore, and so I've just chosen the biographies of 3 champions who I find interesting, and I'm going to read them through. If it's something you like, feel free to tell me and I'll do more of it. So first I've chosen Trundle, the Troll King. Trolls are, for the most part, hulking and brutish creatures, found in many of Runeterra's least hospitable environments. They're not invulnerable, they are blessed with a hardy constitution and the ability to heal more quickly than other mortal races, especially the feeble humans. This means that they can endure the extremes of climate and scarce resources merely by outsurviving their rivals, and this is the most likely reason some of the largest known tribes still call the mountains of Freljord home. Trundle was whelped in a filthy cave along with a brood of 15 brothers and sisters. Times were particularly hard, so that only 7 of them grew strong enough to join the ranks of their chieftain's warband, and only 3 remained after their first winter of raiding. As the warband feasted, the chieftain spoke of his intention to circle back and raid some of the lands again. All would fear them, and it would get easier every time. Frowning, Trundle stood up and said this plan was no good. The people they had crushed had nothing left for the tribe to take. They should return next winter when the granaries were full again and the livestock grown big enough to make more than a single mouthful. Many of the other trolls did not like this at all. They ground their teeth and thumped the side of their heads, trying to comprehend what Trundle was suggesting. Was he a coward? Had the cold got into his brain and turned it to slush? The beat chieftain beat Trundle with a rock and threw him away down the mountainside. Fools had no place in his warband. Trundle wandered far, for he knew he would not be welcome anywhere nearby. He avoided other troll tribes and scattered across the tundra, and was careful to keep his distance from the feral yetis that roamed the highlands. By the time he gazed up at the stars and remembered all the stories he had been told as a pup, legends of Grugback the Wise and other ancient troll kings who followed the old gods and were gifted with powerful weapons as a symbol of their right to rule the world. Eventually, Trundle came to a great crack in the ground. While he was glad to be out of the wind, he soon found himself lost in a maze of twisted, howling canyons that seemed to sink deeper beneath the Freljord than the mountains rose above it. And at the very bottom of that abyss, he met the Ice Witch. She waited for him on a shimmering frozen lake, surrounded by little human warriors, skins in furs and metal. Trundle was not daunted by any of this, but the Ice Witch wanted to know how he had found his way here, into the very heart of her domain, and how he was able to walk upon her lake. Trundle looked down. The ice beneath his feet was darker than the night sky far overhead. It made his brain want to squirm around inside his skull. The Ice Witch told him he was special, something called Iceborn, which meant he could stay here with her. But Trundle did not want this, and told her how he had been cast out by the chieftain, and that he wanted to find a great weapon to become a troll king like Grugback and all the others. To his surprise, the Ice King Witch agreed, and handed him a mighty club of ice called Bone Shiver. With this, he could become king of all trolls and form a great alliance with a human tribe. He eagerly agreed and began the long journey home. When Trundle arrived, the chieftain laughed in his face until Trundle bashed him over the head with Bone Shiver. In an instant, the old troll was frozen solid by the club's icy magic, and a second blow shattered his body into pieces. Awed by Trundle's newfound strength, the rest of the warband listened to his tale of the Ice Witch and the alliance she had promised. Trundle was smart. Trundle had been chosen to wield great power. Trundle would be their king. And with Trundle leading the charge, the time of the trolls is surely coming. That was the first one. The second one I've chosen is Ivan, the Green Father. Ivan the Cruel was renowned as a fierce warrior in the latter days of the ancient Voriard. His clan followed the most warlike of the old gods, and would not kneel before the upstart 3 sisters like so many others had. However, the dark sorcery that strengthened their armies was undeniable. Ivan and his kin plotted long and hard to overthrow these hated Iceborn, eventually setting sail into the east, in search of the land where the sun first rose, from where it was said that all magic flowed into the world. If Ivan could seize such power for his own, then he could surely break any foe. As his fleet sailed over the horizon, they passed out of memory and into myth, for they were never seen in their homeland again. In truth, Ivan the Cruel landed on the shores of Ionia. After cleaving through a dozen coastal settlements, he and his warriors discovered a sacred grove known as Omikialan, the heart of the world, and there, in that strange and verdant garden, they met the fiercest resistance. Chimeric beings, half human, half beast, came at them again and again beneath the twisted branches. Undeterred, Ivan pressed on, until the battered remnants of his expedition reached what the Ionians held so sacred, the legendary God Willow. Ivan was transfixed. Even as the fighting raged around him, it was a truly colossal tree, dripping with long gossamer leaves that shimmered with a golden green light. It was magic like nothing he had ever felt before, and it was clear these inhuman creatures would die to protect it. Seeking to shatter their resolve, he took up his war axe and roared with hatred as he struck at the God Willow over and over again. The great tree fell. In a riot of life energy, Ivan the Cruel was instantly undone. Detached, drifting, he saw the battle was over. The flesh of the fallen fed carrion birds and insects alike, or decayed under bursts of colourful mushrooms. Bones rotted into fertile soil, and seeds within it budded, sprouting into trees bearing fruit of their own. Leaves and petals pulsated like colourful hearts. From the death that surrounded him, life exploded forth in ways too numerous to believe. Never had Ivan beheld such beauty. Life in all its forms was tangled together like an impossible knot that didn't want to be untied. He wept, and those dewdrop tears fell upon his changed body. He was taller than he remembered. His limbs were rough with bark and leaves. The magic of an entirely different world coursed through him. He did not know why or how, but he was all that now remained of the God Willow. With that realization, he heard the bawling of hills and the howling of trees and the dripping tears of moss. He reflected upon the mistakes he'd made, cruelty he'd visited on others. Remorse washed over Ivan, and he cried out for forgiveness. When he finally moved, so much time had passed that the world felt new. The violence and sadness of his former self were mere echoes in his heart. He found he could dig his toes deep into the soil and commune with the roots, rocks, rivers, and even the dirt itself had opinions. Ivan wandered far, across Ionia and beyond, and the strange magic of Omikialan followed in his wake. He developed close kinships with creatures great and small, observing their foibles, delighting in their little habits, and occasionally offering a helping hand. He shortened the inchworm's path, played tricks with mischievous branglebacks, hugged formy elmarks, and laughed with wizened elder fungus. In one instance, he found a wounded stone golem. Knowing the poor thing's spirit was fading, he fashioned her a new heart from a river pebble, and the golem became Ivan's devoted, lifelong friend. He named her Daisy, after the flowers that mysteriously sprouted from her stone body. Sometimes, Ivan encountered mortals, and many of them were at least somewhat peaceful. They called him Bramblefoot, or Greenfather, or the Old Woodsman, and told tales of his strange benevolence, but he was filled with sadness to see how they still took more than they gave, how they could be so cruel and careless, and he retreated from their company. If he bore the God Willow's legacy, he needed to cultivate humanity, help them watch, listen and grow. Being mortal once himself, Ivan knew this would be difficult, so he smiled and challenged himself to complete his task before the final sunset. He knew he would have time. And finally, on to the last story I've chosen, Silas, the Unshackled. As a mage born to a poor Damassian family, Silas of Dregborn was perhaps doomed from the start. Despite their low social standing, his family were firm believers in their country's ideals. So when they discovered their son was afflicted with magical abilities, they convinced him to turn himself into the kingdom's mage seekers. Noting the boy's curious ability to sense magic, they used Silas to identify other mages living among the citizenry. For the first time in his life, he felt he had a future, a life in service to his country, and he performed these duties faithfully. He was proud, but lonely, forbidden from associating with anyone but his handlers. Through his work, Silas began to notice that magic was far more prevalent than Demacia cared to admit. He could sense glimmers of hidden power, even among the wealthy and prominent, some of whom were the most outspoken decriers of mages. But while the poor were punished for their afflictions, the elite seemed above the law, and their hypocrisy planted the first seeds of doubt in Silas's mind. Those doubts finally bloomed in one deadly, fateful event, when Silas and his handlers encountered a mage living in a hiding in the countryside. After discovering it was only a young girl, Silas took pity on her. When he tried to shield the child from the mage seekers, he accidentally brushed against her skin. The girl's magic rushed through Silas's body, but rather than killing him, it shot forth from his hands in raw, uncontrolled bursts. It was a talent he did not know he possessed, and it resulted in the deaths of 3 people, including his mage seeker mentor. Knowing he would be called a murderer, Silas went on the run, and quickly gained notoriety as one of the most dangerous mages in Demacia. Indeed, when the mage seekers found him, they showed no mercy. Though he was still a youth, Silas was sentenced to life imprisonment. He languished in the darkest depths of the mage seeker compound, forced to wear heavy shackles of magic dampening petricite. Robbed of his arcane sight, his heart turned as hard as stone that bound him, and he dreamed of vengeance on all who put him there. After 15 wretched years, a young volunteer from the Illuminators named Luxana began to visit him. Even with his shackles, Silas recognised her as a singularly powerful mage, and over the time the two forged an unusual and secretive bond. In exchange for Silas's knowledge of the control of magic, Lux educated him on about the world outside himself, and brought him whatever books he desired. Eventually, through careful manipulation, he convinced the girl to smuggle a forbidden tome into his cell. The original writers of the great sculptor Durand, detailing his work with petricite. The work revealed the secrets of the stone to Silas. It was the foundation of Demacia's defences against harmful sorcery, but he came to see that it did not suppress magic, but absorb it. And if the power was held within the petricite, Silas wondered, could he release it? All he needed was a source of magic, a source like Lux. But she never visited Silas again. Her family, the immensely powerful Crown Guards, had learned of their contacts and were furious that Lux had broken the law to help this vile criminal. Without explanation, it was arranged for Silas to be executed. On the scaffold, Lux pleaded for her friend's life, but her cries fell on deaf ears. As the headsman pushed past her to raise his sword, Silas managed to touch Lux. As he had predicted, her power surged into the petricite shackles, ready for him to unleash. With that stolen magic, Silas blasted his way free, sparing only the terrified young Crown Guard. He left the Mage Seeker compound not as an outcast, but as a new, defiant symbol of the broken and persecuted in Demacia. While travelling the kingdom in secret, he amassed a following of exiled mages. However, he perhaps only knew that even their combined power would not be enough to succeed in toppling the throne, which is why, with a band of his closest followers and several hardy oxen, Silas eventually journeyed over the northern mountains to the frozen tundra of Freljord. There, he seeks new allies and great elemental magic of the ancient legend, so that he might return to Demacia and demolish the oppressive system that has made him and his fellow mages suffer for so long. So thank you for watching if you've made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed. If you like this, there's plenty more stories to go through. Just give it a like, comment any champions you'd like to see, or anything else you'd like to see from me. It's been UK Tingles, and I'm out.